Hello everyone and welcome back to Motorhaus, and today on Motorhaus we're going to try something a little bit different. As regular viewers to the channel will know, last week I was over at Stoneleigh for Race Retro 2025. Go and check out the coverage of that, and whilst I was there I got the opportunity to walk around Iconic Auctioneers auction sale at Race Retro 2025. Now, whilst I was there, I had a look around a number of lots that certainly stood out to me, and I particularly wondered what those lots would go under the hammer for. It is a surprise, let me tell you. There's an overarching thing. Quite a lot of unsold lots. Some of the star lots failed to sell, and the lots that did sell, quite a lot of them were either at the very bottom end of the estimate or ended up having an out of auction deal done. Look, let's get into it. Let's have a look at some of the cars that sold, and let's actually have a look at some of the auction results. Let's start off with, I think, one of the real eye-catching cars there, which was the MG Metro 6R4 Group B X-Works car. This was the very famous ex-Tony Pond car, X-Works car, famously campaigned at the infamous Rally de Portugal. It was an event that went down in infamy as one of the events that kind of brought a death knell to Group B. Very well-known car, has been campaigned at Goodwood Festival of Speed, this, that and the other. Real treat to behold. There was another 6R4 available as well, and that was the Clubman spec car. Very clean, very original, only 3,423 miles on that. So let's have a look. What actually was the deal with this? Well, the estimate on the X-Works Tony Pond car was £275,000 to £325,000. In the end, it sold for £270,000. So actually just below the bottom end of estimate. Maybe a bit of a surprise actually for such an iconic liveried car driven by Austin Rover's works driver. The Clubman spec 6R4, that was estimated for $200,000 to $240,000, and that made its bottom estimate. That made £200,500. So interesting, really. On the day, there was a 70 grand premium for a work spec car with rally history that was driven by Tony Pond and has been used and driven hard, versus a very clean, low mileage Clubman spec car. Quite an interesting result. Okay, let's move on now to some of the road cars, some of the classics. One that jumped out to me was the 89 Rover Mini 30 Heritage Electric. This was built for Chris Rea, offered directly from Chris Rea, and offered up for auction for charity. Quite often you expect charity cars to perhaps reach more money than you'd expect because there is a philanthropic element involved. That car was estimated at between 30 to 35. On the day, sales price for that was $25,875. You be the judge if you think that's a good buy or not. Now, moving on, lot 602. This for me is one of the low-key shocks of the auction. Sunbeam Tiger, it was a really beautiful car in the flesh, very original, very clean, unmodified, super original. The estimate on that car was 35 to 40, but it was being sold without reserve. On the day, yowzers, trousers, £20,813. Are you kidding me? £20,813 for a 65 Sunbeam Tiger in really nice condition, totally original. Crikey. Apparently, it benefited from a substantial recent expenditure, including cosmetic restoration. I can't think that you could buy a donor car and restore it for anywhere close to what that sold for. That was a steal. If I'd have had 25 grand in my back pocket, that would have been going home with me that day. No doubt about it. Okay, so let's talk about the Land Rovers that were up for sale. Once upon a time, it would have been unheard of, probably, to see a Land Rover Defender in the same auction room as exotic cars and so on. But as we all know, traditional Defenders now are very prized vehicles, and some of them can fetch a lot of money as a result. Now, there was a matching pair of 90 and 110 soft-top vehicles, clearly recently restored, effectively identical pairs to each other. The short wheelbase, the 90 and the 110, they were estimated roughly in the same ballpark. I think on the day I had a look and I figured out that the estimate was somewhere between 26 grand at the low end and 38 grand at the top end. The short wheelbase Defender didn't sell. That is listed on the webpage as buy it now for 26. So someone's clearly quite happy to accept even the bottom end of the estimate for that. If we have a look at the 110, the long wheelbase, that did sell for £23,625. So, I mean, crikey, that sold quite a bit below bottom estimate. But obviously, whoever had restored the pair of those vehicles and put them through auction was happy to let that go. One can only assume that they've made something of a profit at that price point. Now, a Defender that I didn't film on the day was a 2008 Land Rover Defender 90 TDCi soft top. So this is a very late Defender. The TDCi, often referred to as the Puma cars. Nice looking car, this. Again, all of the ones in there had this sort of designer heritage sort of look to them. Soft tops, some of the aftermarket stuff on there. I can well easily see this being a TikToker, Instagrammer 90 that probably unfortunately never really goes much off-road at all. The estimate on that, I can't remember because I didn't actually go and have a look at it, but it sold on the day for £29,250. I think that's a good price for whoever was selling that. I think that's about right, especially as, I don't know if this is actually going to come across on the screen grab, but is anyone else seeing what I'm seeing? That door shade doesn't seem to match the paint of the rest of the car. Yeah, maybe it's just me. Anyway, okay, moving on then. A car that really caught my eye was the 72 TVR Vixen V8 Tuscan Arnage. Fantastic looking car, really muscular, great looking thing. This car did not sell on the day. Now, over on the website, it says buy it now for £52,000. On the day, looking through the auction footage, it got bid up to £43,000. I'm not really sure with this one. It is, at the end of the day, quite a heavily modified classic. Beautifully done. Looks like it was done by Project Heaven. Peter Bulbick over at Project Heaven, great guy. They built some great cars, so I'm sure that the quality of work that's been done over there is fantastic. However, when it comes to spending that kind of money on a classic car, I would argue that buyers are looking either for a really nice original road car, or they're looking for something, if it's modified like this, that they can use in competition. And the problem with TVRs is that unless it's got FIA papers, or if it was an FIA homologated car in period, might be a little bit tricky to run. Having said that, it does look like it's got various little bits of competition work in there. So there are some race series that allow these kind of outlaw cars in. Don't know. What's it worth to you? Clearly, on the day, it was worth to someone. 43,000 plus buyer's premium, so 45 grand ish or thereabouts, who knows, but did not sell. Now then, let's have a look at some Jags, shall we? There are a couple of really nice classic Jags that caught my eye on the day. Lovely XK150 3.8S fixed head coupe. XK150S, really rare car to start with. This one stood out. Factory right-hand drive car, because an awful lot of those cars in period went out to America and have been brought back. This one, which I didn't see on the day, and you can see if you look on the Iconic Auctioneers website, there are period photographs of the car competing. This kind of stuff can quite often help open doors if you want to compete at classic events and so on. Again, here's another one that did not sell. Let's have a look at my notes. What did it sell here? So, it got bid up to just 52,000. Really not the interest on the day at all. I really would have expected it to go higher than that. Estimate was 70 to 80, so it didn't get anywhere near its low-end reserve. It's on the Iconic Auctioneers website. Buy it now for 80,500. Yikes. Moving on to another Jag. This one's another bit of a yikes moment, this is. So this was a 64 E-Type Series 1. It's the ex-Earls Court Motor Show car. So cars like that usually attract a premium because they're cars that, you know, if you go back into history, you'll often see it in the magazines, in the newspapers of the period. Motor show cars often attract a bit of a premium. This one, I can't help but wonder if it sent a mixed message to buyers. Now, again, we've got the thing of the fact that it's a historic car. It was apparently used for development at Jaguar. And yet, it's clearly presented here in a bit of a competition type form. There's a few things that jump out. If you have a look at the rocker covers, these are the later finned Mark II rocker covers, which would only have appeared on a very late sort of Series 1.5, Series 2 car, definitely a Series 2 car, maybe a 1.5 car. Also, if you have a look at the interior, it's obviously been stripped out for race use, but it's got the rocker switches, which you'd see again on a later Series 2 car. I know it says that it's been a development car, but also it's set up for road racing or competition work of some kind. It sends a bit of a mixed message, and I think that's probably the reason why this car maybe didn't sell or maybe didn't reach what people were hoping to. Estimate was 70 to 80,000. It got bid up to 52,000. That's a shock. I mean, a good Series 1 E-Type is 60 grand at auction all day long, even in the current climate of being depressed. I don't know what to say about this. Offered buy it now for 70,000. I'm not quite sure what the answer is for this one. Part of me wonders if it's just to commit to it's either a preserved original car or it's a full-on competition car. Not really sure what the answer is for that one. All right, let's have a look at the 79 Ferrari Dino 308 GT4. Beautiful looking car this was in the flesh. Really nicely turned out example. Really liked this. Here's an interesting one. This is the first car that I'm going to cover where it is listed as sold for an undisclosed sum. Now we can do some guesswork of this. Estimate was 40 to 50. I've watched the auction footage back. This was bid up to 29,000 and the auctioneer said unsold. Now, what's happened here? Well, let me tell you, I've been in a situation before helping someone at auction, and quite often what happens is when a car either only meets its very bottom reserve or doesn't meet reserve, a few things happen. Sometimes the auctioneers will come back and go, look, do you know what? We'll just waive our auction fees if you'll take what it went under the hammer for. Why would they do that? Well, because the auction house will still make their cut on the buyer's premium, so it's always in their interest to make a sale on the day. What else could happen? It may well be that they had someone potentially lined up. It may be that the high bidder they had a chat to afterwards, and they gave them a figure and said, look, we've had a chat with the seller. If you can meet them at this price, we can do a deal. Either way, clearly a deal was done. What do we think it went for? Well, let us assume the £29,000 the seller of the car was actually happy with and accepted that. But let's assume that with buyer's premium, that'd be somewhere around £31,000 to £32,000. Either way you cut it, that is a significant way long below the lower estimate. Ultimately, really don't know what it sold for, but it does give you an idea of the market. And now on to another of my favourites at the auction. This was the 2007 Bentley Arnage T Mulliner Level 2, which is quite the mouthful, and I struggled with on the day. This was an interesting one. This had an estimate of 23 to 28, which I thought was a really good deal. It actually ended up selling for £22,500. I think a bargain. Where on earth are you going to get a car of that kind of build quality, that kind of performance, that kind of style, that kind of class for that sort of money? Obviously, huge running costs, but blimey, what a bargain that was. Moving on then, it's Porsche time. Let's have a look at the group of Porsches that I had a look at. Obviously here at Motorhaus, we're big Porsche fans. We do a lot of Porsche content, so I was very, very interested to see what these cars would go for. So the first car to have a look at is this 2003 911 GT3. Now this is obviously a motorsport prepared car. It's quite a fierce machine. Even compared to a standard road-going 996, this is clearly a competition warrior of a vehicle. Now, price-wise, this is a real upset. I'll show you this just as a reference point. I had a quick look around online about the cheapest road-going GT3 I could find was this 2000 GT3 Club Sport car offered at a shade under £72,000. Now, the estimate on the GT3 at the auction was 50 to 60,000. It did not sell. Watching the footage back, it was only auctioned up to £38,000. That was the only bid. That was the high bid in the room. It's offered for £52,500, which I have to say, I think represents pretty good value for money, even for what it's being offered for. I can't imagine it would take that much to turn this back into a slightly more presentable road car, if that's what you wanted. Something a little bit more civilized that you could live with. Alternatively, you're actually looking for a really fantastic ready-to-go competition car. I mean, crikey, it saves you the job of cutting up a nice clean GT3. So, yeah, bit of a surprise there. Moving on was the 72 911T 2.4. This car I've seen in person before Race Retro. Great looking car. Quite a well-known competition car in Porsche circles, I believe. Modified car. I don't know if that went against it. It's a 2.4, an external oil cap car, which for a collector would certainly have a degree of collectability to it. It's the X-Par Motorsport car, this one. This was estimated at 50 to 60. Another no sale. This got bid up to 39,000, and obviously no sale. Offered at 49,500. Quite an upset there, potentially. Now then, a car that I could not see any issue with whatsoever, and I thought would just fly away, was the absolute poster child, a Guards Red 930 Turbo 87 Really nicely spec'd car. Guards red car, black Fuchs wheels, lovely, well spec'd, black leather interior. It had it all going for it. Huge amount of service history. Great car. On the face of it, absolutely nothing wrong here. Didn't sell. This was bid up to 90,000. It's offered on Iconic Auctioneers website for 103,500. Is that maybe just a little bit stiff at the moment? I don't think it's far off its money. You know, we're like 10, 13 grand out, but then that is the equivalent of a 996 difference in value, if you catch my drift. Gorgeous car, though. One of the cars that I would have really loved to have taken home with me. Another car I'd have really, really liked to have taken home with me was this 1980 911 RS replica. This was based on a 1980 right-hand drive 3-litre SC. Apparently there was an investment in the build of over £60,000. This one, the auction estimate was absolutely spot on. This was estimated at 70 to 80. It sold for £78,750. Fantastic looking car. I'm sure a really lovely car to live with. If you wanted the look of an early RS car for literally a fraction of the price, and also actually a car that's going to be easier to live with as well, that represented a smart buy. Now, at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the first of the, if you will, the supercars that were for sale on the day. Now, a little bit of foreshadowing here, didn't sell. This is an exceptionally rare car, one of 43 GT2R race cars. Apparently one of a handful that's ever been registered for road use. The car was immaculate when I looked at it. I mean, museum grade if you were a very wealthy collector. Let's say a Seinfeld type. This would have fitted into your collection just beautifully. Now, again, a real upset here. It was estimated at between 800 and 900,000. The entry bid was at 500 and it stalled at 600 with, honestly, not a huge amount of bidding going on. It's offered as a buy it now for 850,000. I don't know, I can't help but wonder if that's going back into the collection of the seller. Now, a car I didn't film on the day, and I kind of wish I had done, but one of the reasons I didn't film it is that actually there were constantly loads of people crawling over it. I was quite surprised. An 82 911 SC Targa. I personally like Targas, but there is a clear pecking order usually when it comes to body desirability in air-cooled cars. The tin-top coupes are the most desirable, followed by the Targas, followed by the convertibles. So, smack bang in the middle. It was a really lovely, clean-looking car, but 124,000 miles on it. A very, very period colour scheme you would have to be in love with. But I think it really did polarise people on the day in a very positive way. So it's hell bronze metallic, so metallic brown with a brown and brown interior. It was one of the most brown 911s you could imagine, but dripping with period charm. Look at this. Even had a period Blaupunkt stereo in it, had the Fuchs wheels. That sold for £67,500. I was actually quite surprised. I don't know. Do you think that's what it should have sold for? Am I off the mark with that? Let me know in the comments if you think I am. And now on to a pair of cars that I was very, very interested to see what the market valued them at. We had a pair of Mark IV Toyota Supras. Now, the interesting difference between these two, one of them was a completely boggo standard, super original, super low mileage UK car, but an automatic. And the other one was a JDM spec car, modified manual. both of them twin turbo cars, and I wondered what would happen here, but I did have my gut feeling of what was going to go with these. So if we have a look at the UK spec car, that had an estimate of between £30,000 and £36,000. That made its bottom end estimate. It sold for £30,375 in the end. Now, if we talk about the Japanese market car, the twin turbo manual car, that had an estimate of 40 to 50,000. That again, it was just a little bit below its bottom estimate, but it did sell for £39,667. So, I mean, there you have it. It is rather what I expected. The fact that the Japanese market car was manual would definitely have helped it, but I can't help but feel that we're in a situation here whereby what a lot of the old school pundits would say is that, oh no, you've got to have a proper UK market car and it's got to be completely original and unmodified. Well, I mean, let's be honest. What's the market for the people who want to buy a car like this? It's undoubtedly people who grew up playing Need for Speed, watching Fast and the Furious, where it was all about tuning these cars. It's all about the JDM market buzz. However, wasn't that long ago where there were headlines of £100,000 Toyota Supras. I thought that was a bit nuts at the time, and maybe this auction is showing that maybe that bubble has burst. Now, let's have a chat about the two big upsets of the auction. So there were two cars which were the real kind of headline supercar lots, if you were. There was the 2019 McLaren Senna. It was chassis number 0001, just over 1,000 miles from new, major service. If you were looking for bragging rights McLaren, I mean, it arguably doesn't get much better than this, short of having a really nicely preserved original McLaren F1, does it? So, on paper, should have been an extremely desirable car with a lot of interest. Also, the next car there, something very eye-catching, was the 2021 Ford GT Heritage Edition. That was one of just 50 cars. Interestingly, both cars estimated exactly the same. 800,000 to $1 million was the estimate on these cars. So, what actually happened on the day? Well, neither of them actually sold. And interestingly, the bidding results for both cars were exactly the same. Both the Senna and the Ford GT both stalled at £650,000. Both of them. It's quite remarkable, really. Exactly the same result. The Senna is offered on Iconic Auctioneers website for £840,000. Buy it now. The Ford GT is offered on Iconic Auctioneers website as a buy it now for £865,000. And so there you have it. In a nutshell, that's a quick cross section of some of the auction results on the day. What do you think? Was that an upset? Was it what you expected? Is that the kind of auction results you were expecting for the cars you were watching? In the comments section, let me know what you think. Were things overpriced? Were they underpriced? I'd love to know what you think. Please like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon on another episode of Motorhaus.